The FBI knew who did it. They knew how it was done. They recovered $0 and convicted no one directly involved. On the night of December 11, 1978, 6 men walked into one of the most heavily monitored airports on the planet and walked out with what would be worth over $25 million in today's money in under 64 minutes. No shots fired, no alarms triggered, no fingerprints left behind. What followed was not a manhunt. It was a massacre, as the man who planned the heist began eliminating everyone who could connect him to it. This is not just the story of the most audacious robbery in American history. It is the story of how the perfect crime destroyed everyone who committed it, including the man brilliant enough to pull it off. The money was never found. The mastermind died in prison on unrelated charges. And officially, the crime remains unsolved to this day. This is the Lufthansa heist. The real story is what came after: a dozen murders and the collapse of a criminal empire. Jimmy Burke never looked the part of a criminal mastermind. Raised in foster homes across Queens, he spent nearly 2 decades learning that survival came down to leverage. By the late 1970s, Burke was an Irish outsider in an Italian world, trusted by the Lucchese family but always kept at arm's length. He ran his own crew, but he could never be made. That left him hungry, always searching for the next big score. Opportunity arrived in the form of desperation. Louis Werner, a Lufthansa cargo supervisor, was buried under $18,000 in gambling debt. The number was not a guess. It was written in the ledgers of bookmaker Martin Krugman, who kept detailed records of every dollar owed. Werner's losses had piled up over years, with small bets, bad luck, and compounding interest. By early 1978, the debt was more than he could ever repay. Krugman made it clear: pay up or else. Werner's job gave him access to the vault, and Krugman saw a way out for both of them. Under threat, Werner handed over the vault access code. Krugman relayed it to Henry Hill, Burke's trusted go-between. The information flowed up the chain, each man adding his own layer of risk. Burke now held the key to a supposedly impenetrable vault, all because a middle manager could not cover his bets. The breach did not start with guns or blueprints. It began with debt, fear, and a name in a bookmaker's notebook. The perfect crime was set in motion by the oldest weakness in the book, owing the wrong people too much money. Nothing at JFK moved without the Gambinos knowing. The cargo terminal was their turf, and Jimmy Burke understood the rules. Before a single plan could be set in motion, word came down: pay the tax or walk away. The number was steep, $200,000, handed off through Paolo Lecastri, the Gambino family's man on the inside. Burke tried to haggle, shaving $50,000 off the demand, but the message was clear: the Gambinos would have their cut, no matter how much risk Burke's crew faced. With the price of admission set, the crew stood ready. Tommy DeSimone, always the enforcer, would handle the vault with Joe Civitello and Angelo Sepe as muscle. Louis Cafora and Tony Rodriguez managed the perimeter and crash cars, while Joseph Costa loaded the cargo. Parnell Stacks Edwards was on van duty. His job was to get the loot out and torch the evidence. Henry Hill worked the logistics, keeping everyone in line and the plan on schedule. Paolo Lecastri, ever watchful, lingered as both participant and collector, ensuring the Gambino's interests were protected. The division of labor was precise. Each man had a role, each step timed to the minute. But with the Gambino tax looming and Lecastri embedded in the operation, the job carried an extra layer of danger. The pressure from outside was as real as the threat inside. The crew's nerves were stretched thin, the clock ticking toward the night of the heist. At 3:12 in the morning, 6 men in masks walked through the employee entrance of the Lufthansa cargo building. They carried forged badges and moved with a precision that suggested practice, not panic. Tommy DeSimone led the way, shotgun in hand, his eyes locked on the lone night shift worker John Murray. Murray was forced to radio Rudy Eyrich, the vault specialist. Eyrich arrived, still half asleep, and found himself staring down the barrel of a gun. The crew already knew the code 0179, thanks to the chain of debt and betrayal that had started months earlier. Irik's hand shook as he entered the sequence. The first door slid open. Instead of rushing, the men paused. They resealed the door, waited for the faint click, then opened the second. The vault's alarm system, designed to catch amateurs, was blind to insiders who understood its timing flaw. Inside, the crew found more than 40 containers packed with cash and jewels. They loaded the loot into a black Ford Econoline van, stacking bag after bag, roughly $5 to $6 million worth, without a single alarm sounding. Irik, forced to cooperate, watched as his every move was timed, every slip anticipated. In just over an hour, the job was done. The vault, built to be unbreakable, had been cracked by a code, a flaw, and a man with nothing left to lose. When the crew vanished into the night, they left behind only bound employees in a puzzle that would baffle investigators for years. The black Ford Econoline van did not stay hidden for long. Days after the robbery, a parking ticket landed on its windshield, issued to a fake name, but the license plate matched the van seen leaving JFK. Crime lab techs dusted the interior and found fingerprints on the steering wheel and door panel. The prints matched Parnell Stacks Edwards, a familiar face to the NYPD and the crew's designated driver. But the match came with problems. The AFIS database in 1978 was limited, and the van had already been moved by airport security before the prints were lifted. Chain of custody was shaky, and the original lift plates vanished. The strongest forensic lead in the case was already slipping away. Meanwhile, the FBI's wiretap unit picked up chatter on a payphone in Queens. Angelo Seppi, one of Burke's muscle, was overheard talking about the money in the bag. The call was intercepted on December 20th, just over a week after the heist. The wiretap transcript described Seppi's voice, but the recording could not be authenticated well enough for court. The agents had a tantalizing glimpse into the crew's movements, but not enough to make an arrest. Inside the task force, frustration mounted. They had a van, a fingerprint, and a wiretap, each piece pointing to the right men, but none strong enough to hold up in court. The pressure on the crew tightened. Burke understood what these cracks meant: loose ends and the need for silence. Bodies started turning up before the money could even cool. Jimmy Burke did not wait for the law to close in. He hunted his own crew. Parnell Stacks Edwards, the van driver, was found shot in the head in a Brooklyn apartment less than a week after the heist. Martin Krugman, the bookmaker who passed on the tip, vanished from his Queens office in January. Richard Eaton, who skimmed cash from laundering fronts, was tortured and dumped in a Brooklyn laundry. Each killing was a message: talk and you are done. Even Paolo Licastri, the Gambino liaison, was shot after he demanded more than his cut. The money itself moved faster than the bodies. Wire transfers ran through carpet cleaning businesses and payday lenders, then disappeared into shell companies in the British Virgin Islands, Caribbean Holdings, Sunset Enterprises. Small cash payouts kept mouths shut, but silence rarely lasted. On paper, the money was gone. In reality, so were most of the men who touched it. Henry Hill's arrest by the DEA on April 23, 1980, changed everything. Facing decades behind bars on drug charges, Hill agreed to cooperate. His testimony cracked open the inner workings of the Lufthansa job, including names, methods, the chain of orders, and the bloody aftermath. Prosecutors finally had an insider who could tie Burke and his crew to the heist, even if most of the original players were already dead or missing. Louis Werner, the desperate cargo supervisor who handed over the vault code, became the only man ever convicted for a crime directly linked to the robbery. He received a 15-year sentence under federal racketeering statutes. Court memoranda cited his gambling debt as the motive, but the money itself had vanished. Jimmy Burke, the architect of the plan, was never charged for Lufthansa. Instead, he died in prison in 1996, serving time for an unrelated murder. Decades later, Vincent Asaro, a Gambino associate, stood trial for conspiracy to rob Lufthansa, but a jury acquitted him in 2015. The government never recovered the cash, gold, or jewels. The perfect crime left a trail of bodies, a single conviction, and a fortune that simply disappeared. The vault is empty. The money vanished. No confession, no closure. Today, the blueprint for the perfect heist still tempts and taunts. With every unsolved robbery, echoes of that night at JFK remind us that even the best guarded secrets can slip through the cracks. What would you risk for a shot at vanishing millions?